Well, this is Upside. It is now the week ending. That'll be the 16th of Feb. We have Andrew from 7%. We got Lomax from Outsides. We got Mads and myself from Superseed. Gents, what has been happening this week?
On the work side, had a really interesting call with an LP, big LP in Asia, has 3,000 managers, individual managers in their portfolio, venture. And what was shocking to me was he only had 3 in Europe. 3. And you know, that my takeaway from that is let's just remember, we are part of a massive global ecosystem, much as we are very European centric. But secondly, there's a long way to go. Hopefully that 3 will become 10, will become 20. You know, there's opportunity.
Where are the others? Are they global? Are they US centric?
China, India, US, basically.
And what was the insight onto the European or lack of European VC?
It's just a blind spot for them. It's just like they're based in Southeast Asia, then they go to the US. India and China, fast growing. You know, there's a lot of capital in those ecosystems. There's just a perception that Europe is a little bit behind, or the returns are not as interesting, which we know is not true. We know on a cohort basis
you educated him appropriately.
Well, I mean, of course.
Andrew, what's cooking with you?
Well, actually, it's a great point. I guess what we're partly talking about is that the majority of money, arguably in Europe over the last sort of 10 years, and has gone into companies that only iterate, and they've sort of failed yet to create companies of global change and win markets. So when you look at the dominant tech stack today, most of these US companies, there are some exceptions, Spotify being a fantastic one, and the epoch-defining technologies of the next 10, 20 years, currently I would argue in the lead are US companies. Again, possibly some Chinese. So think about AI, health, robotics, space tech. There are some exceptions. And I think partly the reason is that European investors often lack the courage and ambition to back those genuinely next generation technologies early.
Mads, what's the latest with you this week? What's been happening with you?
It's been a great week. We've just agreed terms on an investment into a wonderful young company in the insurtech space. Insurance sometimes gets accused of being a bit boring, but yes, this business is very successful, using all the good stuff, the sensors, the AI, all the stuff.
Cool. I've been this week I've mostly been bothering BVCA students who are getting into VC. So one of the trainers there asked me to go and do a talk on best practice, and I said, James, I'm possibly not the best guy to talk about best practice, but I can certainly give some insights into what's been happening and how we grew and how we started and all the good, the bad, and the end. He said, yes, I want that. I want all the kind of the slightly more controversial, contentious stuff. I said, okay, then I'm possibly a man. So that was my week. So let's cross over the channel, over to Paris, the France AI Summit. It's all about, it was a statement on inclusive and sustainable artificial intelligence for people and planet. That was the document to sign. And there were 100 countries in attendance at the summit, of which 61 signed, and the non-signatories, quite interestingly, were the UK and the US. So looking from JD Vance's perspective, he was very much an American first, as no great surprises. American first, if you're not in, you're out, we're in charge. So I guess the broader question for the room is this important that we didn't sign? Did we not sign for the right reasons? How did you feel about the key aspects covered? There's accessibility, ethical AI, this innovation piece, future of work, sustainability, collaboration. It all reads a little bit like a DEI contract, which I obviously is not what America's all about, and possibly not why the UK signed. And how much teeth does this really have? So, Andrew, what else do you know about it? What are your thoughts on the AI summit?
It was a smart move on the UK government's part. It's easy diplomatic win with the US. I'm not sure how much this actually means to sign up to it. Things are moving so quickly anyway. Things could be very different within a year. So I don't think it matters either way. And I think we probably made the right decision. So
aligning ourselves as independent and more kind of growth centric. What kind of my take?
I just think there are so many unanswered questions, and the technology is moving so fast. I mean, I think there was the CEO of a Chinese company, I can't remember the name of it, who presented a graph saying that he expected AI consciousness by 2030 and AI awareness by 2027. I think that's aggressive. Many greater experts, probably including him, than I. So who knows? Maybe he's right. But things are moving so quickly. I don't know how much
China
a French
directive.
Yeah, I mean, but like a French directive, what's that mean? That what matters is delivering the technology, and that's going to outstrip technologies being developed and moving forward far faster than any legislature, I can't say the word, can
Sounds
write
French
stuff
to
into
me,
law.
baby. Lomax, what do you think?
I don't know whether we can swear, but I couldn't give two shits about this declaration. Like, as in, first of all, it's not a directive. This is just like
It's just a press release, right? No,
It's a piece
basically.
of paper, I'm sort of envisaging, they get back, you wave around, you land in your home country, you wave it, right? It means literally nothing, and governments will change and they'll ignore it. It'll get put in a drawer. I think the only significance here is that, UK not signing it and sort of aligning itself more with the US, like diplomatically. There's probably tariffs in mind. There's probably looking to create a positioning that's slightly different from the EU and slightly away from the EU Digital Services Act. So I think it's a storm in a teacup, really. I think it's, apart from this little kind of political sideshow on it, I don't really care about it. I don't think it means a lot. We will not be talking about this in months' time.
Yeah, and also kind of over some of the other news from the EU about this kind of 50 billion euro investment boost. So, Mads, where would you take this conversation?
Yeah, I'm even surprised we're talking about this press release now. I think it was sort of, headlined yesterday and forgotten yesterday. I think the bigger news, the bigger context here is, the US announced the $500 billion for AI, kind of the Stargate initiative. And then Macron, he sort of matched it, right? He said, look, we got 109 billion euros in France, precisely matching the US bid on a per capita basis, which I thought is gutsy of him. I kind of like it.
Well,
it's the deal making here.
He's so far down in the popularity polls. I think he's possibly second or third off the bottom with an approval rating. So maybe he's trying to win some votes.
I don't care. I don't care how popular he is. I want to see action from our leaders.
Give me the money.
And focus on priorities that matter. Listen, UK GDP growth was 0.1% last quarter. Okay, I couldn't give a toss about a press release about some nice vague words. I want to see action about things that can actually make a difference to the economy. And with AI, we have the biggest opportunity in our generation, right? Let's focus on that, not kind of all the softy side of it, but how is it actually going to make meaningful difference to our economies in terms of growth, in terms of efficiency and productivity? I think that's what really matters. I thought it was really interesting to see the Commission come out with a 50 billion euro kind of investment announcement, which goes beyond what the US federal government has done. So more direct dollars, less deal making perhaps with corporates, which is what you could miss a bit there. So in that sense, it's more Bidenomics maybe than Trumponomics. And the question is whether it will work, because we know that nothing happens without entrepreneurs and private capital. You can wave all the checkbooks around you want, but if there are no kind of privately driven projects, it's just all going to become white elephants. So the question here is, can the European Union, can Europe really convince founders and investors to go deep in terms of investment here? And I think it was interesting to see France and see them leading the way. Now, in my book, the ideal approach would be something that combines the UK's very detailed plan for AI. I think, Lomax, you often ask for the plan. I actually thought the UK did some great work developing a detailed plan. But what we then need is we need money and action and targets and goals. And I think the EU's fiscal injection of capital to prime the pump is great. And then I think the US approach to deal making and really strike deals with private business to help attract the private capital and get the entrepreneurs going is essential. So something that combines those three approaches, in my book, would be the ideal. And I'm sort of waiting for somebody to come with that. But can it come from Europe? That would be great. And maybe France can lead the way here.
Well, let's stay in France. Let's go Le Chat from Mistral. I'm sure I've said that wrong. Très bon. Can't use the wrong tense. So, Mads, this doesn't look like a massive game-changing device. What I've taken away is this is a faster way of getting results from an LLM. Is it a bit too late? They've based a lot of their content from the partnership they have with the AFP. It's GDPR limited, perhaps, because it's in the EU, lacks that brand value and reach. And many of the users are complaining that it's quite boring to use as an LLM. So, Mads, maybe you can kick off with how you see Le Chat as this new product from Mistral in France.
Dan's just alienated all our French users.
I know. I'm just let me just upset everyone.
It was with love and relish. I know. Look, the truth is there were some recriminations after the DeepSeek launch. I think many people sort of said, look, we've been looking at the US for kind of with envy for years, saying they have all this money, all this capex. They have all these chips. They can build all these amazing models. No chance we can catch up. We're doomed. And then lo and behold, the Chinese with cut down chips that are, handicapped due to export controls, et cetera, they'll have a pretty darn good model. And we're all looking at our friends at Mistral and saying, well, why not you? Why could you not have done that? So now it's the French AI week, and Mistral is back with a vengeance. They had this huge announcement of Le Chat, and I thought the marketing was beautiful, and it was all done very well. And kind of the headline piece is this super cool demo where they say, look, our model is efficient, and you can ask the model to write the snake game in Python, and it will do it much faster than the Claude from Anthropic or the GPT model from OpenAI. And I must say, I thought the demo was beautiful. I did my own personal test, and I was unable to reproduce that performance. So whether some of it was sort of made specifically for the demo, I don't know. I love to see that there is still some ambition in Europe to play in the Super League. I think our big chance here is in open source. I think the DeepSeek team really showed the way on open source and showed that there is still a way to create incredible performance with open source models. We have superb academic talent in Europe, in France. You've got incredible mathematicians in the UK, in Cambridge, in Oxford, Imperial. There's amazing talent. And the fact that we now have more focus on open source means more sharing of knowledge, means it's easier to develop models outside of the hyperscalers. And so I think to some extent, DeepSeek might be a bigger catalyst for European AI than Mistral. And I think Mistral is still important. It's important because European founders need to know that there is a way to start, build, and raise and scale here. And so if there's any takeaway, I'd say I love that they're in the game. I love that they're giving a good kick, and hopefully they can make some hay here while the sun shines.
The open source angle, the whole DeepSeek push into open source, I think, Mads, as you were saying, made it feel to me like this has put Europe back in the game. But Andrew, does this matter? Should we be focusing on foundationals in Europe? What's your take?
I asked ChatGPT what it thought of Le Chat, and it thought it was a French cartoon. And then it came back and said, well, speed isn't everything. And it said, if you need nuanced explanations and research or complex problem solving, that I should speak to it. So that's the American perspective. It didn't really care for its competitor very much. It's all a bit iterative, isn't it? I don't know what they're doing in their R&D lab. Who knows? So I'm speaking from a position of ignorance, but I do think that if you're going to announce something, make sure it's impressive.
My point is that none of this is bad. This is all good stuff. It's just like, I wish we had more going on here, more money, more projects, more people working on it. This is good. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we thought Mistral was a failed project and was going to be sold for parts. So this is great.
Mads, I want you to imagine I have designed and created this beautiful sting intro to AI Corner. And I would love for you, because we talk about AI a lot. So I think we should do a segment of the kind of the broader AI stuff that's cooking in the world. And I know you think about this a lot. So what's some of the broader picture? What's some of the other aspects that are going on in AI right now?
Yeah, just a bit of news from the other side of the Atlantic. Some of the frontier labs. I mean, whether we think they're important or not, I certainly think they are, and I follow it quite closely. And Sam Altman has been out this week saying that there's news around GPT 4.5. It's on the way, and we're expecting it within the next weeks to months. He's saying it's going to be the last non-chain of thought model, and everything will be reasoning, which is interesting. So huge paradigm shift coming in GPT-5, which will be the model after that, which he expects to be a true omni-model that can do it all. And I'm not surprised, because if anybody is using ChatGPT recently, you'll know that there is this delightful model picker today, which allows you to pick 4.0, 01, 03 mini, 03 mini high, the pro version, the older version.
With reasoning.
Whoever came up with that product conventioning I think just needs some basic brand architecture training, because it's absolutely confusing. And so he's saying they're going to try and put a stop to all of that. They want a true omni model that can do it all. In parallel, Elon Musk has been out disclosing that they are very close to releasing Grok 3. And now people will remember the XAI Colossus data center, kind of this 100,000 GPU cluster that was built at record time last year. And since then, the XAI team has been busy developing Grok 3, and it promises to be a really exceptional model, and I can't wait to get my hands on it and test it out when it's released here in a few weeks' time. In the context of DeepSeek, I'd say next level reasoning is more important than ever, because this was one of the areas where DeepSeek made some meaningful enhancements. And this means a lot more inference. And when there's more inference, there's more need for processing and far, far more capability. So, from my perspective, look, we're only a month and a bit into 2025, but it sure promises to be a great year for innovation. I'm actually really, really excited by some of the things we're seeing.
I want to very quickly discuss the very small 25 bips rate cut that the Bank of England did this week, with a view to asking you lovely people the question, is there going to be any effect on investing, any effect on startups, or any medium or longer term impact? Now, from what I've read, we're hopefully expecting another couple of rate cuts, but we have this stagflation potential challenge. Unemployment looks like it's going to go up. Inflation is going up. Growth predicted in the UK this year has been halved, 0.75%. Fixed rate mortgage holders are paying more, even though the base rate has been dropped. So there are definitely aspects here that I think are going to affect the startup and investment community. Mads, where would you take this one?
I would say that the announcement that the UK economy grew by 0.1% in Q4 tells us everything we need to know when we know that that's celebrated as a good achievement.
It wasn't a recession, baby. It wasn't backwards.
Right? We've got four entwined challenges. We've got inflation that's sticky. We've got a fiscal deficit that means no room to maneuver for the government. We've got low growth, and we got creaking public services. And it's quite dire when you think about that. You sort of talk about stagflation, which is not something anybody wants to return to. But so I'd say on the flip side of that, the question is there a way to address all of these things with one unified strategy? And I think that the starting point of that is the UK's new AI strategy, because with AI, we have the most powerful tool for automation and creating efficiency we have had in our lifetime. And the thing we've seen is the government now be ready to, I think Andrew made the point earlier, not just talk about and look at AI as something to give grants to, but actually look at the government as an early customer of these technologies, having a clear program to adopt them, to use them, to scale them. And I think big credit to Matt Clifford for developing that as part of the AI strategy. The UK government is now focused on doing that. The thing I'm still missing, kind of some real numbers around the strategy. So if we talk about using AI to create better public services and more efficiency, what do the numbers look like? Where are the efficiency gains going to come? Where are we going to save money? We saw earlier this week, Bloomberg reporting that the productivity of the NHS has declined from 2019, has declined 20%. Okay, so on one hand, we have this incredibly powerful technology available, and at the same time, productivity is not only stagnating, it's going backwards. And it means we have these public services that clearly are creaking. We have, as we know, people working there that are busting their guts to try and deliver. But because we have allowed things to atrophy with inefficient technologies and inefficient processes and systems, we are just not delivering the kind of support and service we need. So I think there is a unique opportunity here to implement next-gen technologies, to use AI, to drive efficiency. And what I would love the government to do is to put real numbers of that. First of all, to improve the level of service, because we need that, but also to create fiscal room for tax cuts. The tax burden we have, it's too high. Things I would advocate right away to reverse the national insurance for employers increase that we know is impacting jobs, and to reduce VAT because that could help address inflation. Those two initiatives would cost money, but I think we can more than make up for that through investment in efficiency in public services. So that would be my plea to the powers that be, is to take this very seriously and not just look at it as some things we're going to experiment with, but actually put real numbers and real targets around it.
Well, Rachel listens, so we can speak directly to Mrs. Reeves. So get a handle on cost savings, cut taxes, invest and grow. I fear for the time and the inertia baked in there, but Lomax, where would you take this?
Just to say, we talked about 0.1% GDP growth in the UK in Q4. But also interesting below that level is the drip down to GDP per capita in the individual level. That is actually going backwards. It's gone backwards now 2 quarters in a row. So you can talk about the GDP at the macro, at the high level, but if you talk about on a per capita basis, it's actually going backwards. Mads was outlining, we've talked about before, for these initiatives to take hold and for people to start feeling this, change at the individual level. There's a general moroseness about people when you chat to them about the UK at the individual level, because literally we are going backwards. The data now shows that. The rate cuts are good. So we've now gone, I think, 325 basis point cuts. I think that's great. What does that mean for us in tech? I mean, I think the trickle through takes time. This triggers a kind of slow rotation potentially into the equities rather than debt, which would include private markets, which would include us. But that takes a long time to trickle through. I totally agree with Mads. I think Mads is being a bit optimistic on the impact of AI on government and the total government spend. You look at a lot of that government budget, and maybe this is something we could talk about another time. It's like a lot of that, 200 billion, is going on pensions and benefits and things like that. Government spend just over $1 trillion a year, but they're spending a quarter of that on benefits and pensions, right? So it's like we're not going to automate those payments. We can maybe automate the way you deliver those payments, but that's just, it's going to, there's some absolute things in the budget that you can't just automate. My question is, the government, is it, the civil service, is it a great adopter of, AI? Well, that will take time. And B, is the impact might actually, sadly, be smaller than you would hope. One other point that I've just been reflecting on, and this is maybe me getting out of my wheelhouse, but is such in the context of inflationary, is like the government has announced a lot of infrastructure spending. And if you go through all of the infrastructure the government want to build, the new houses, the reservoirs, the runways, the data centers, etc. I was doing some maths. This is like 500 billion of spending. I mean, not now, but like in the next few years. And actually, that could be hugely inflationary in itself if there's not enough slack in the economy. That's a very interesting kind of thing to think about, but we need to worry about the sort of second order consequences of that. Maybe that's me jumping at shadows, and we need to crack on with this infrastructure investment, and then rates going up again to counter that.
That's why we need to create efficiency to free up resources elsewhere.
Well, there you go.
Back circular, baby, circular.
Yeah. We need to get the robots out, for those projects. I mean, they're not going to be built with software.
Call Elon. He's on it. Yeah. Although I saw yesterday that Apple are looking at building humanoid robots. Did you see that?
And you love it. It's the biggest. I
am a massive Apple fan.
Where's the waiting list? Yeah.
But I think as soon as you put an accountant in charge, I knew this as soon as Tim Cook took. I was like, oh no, we need somebody who's just got that kind of inspiration, design thinking, slightly more maverick taste, rather than the accountant running the ship. But I think maybe that is now on the turn, because they realise that things need to change, and they need to at least be looking like they're innovating.
But ultimately, sentiment drives the market.
Yeah,
the economy is so interwoven and complex. Obviously, there are levers that we can pull of automation, but if there is poor sentiment and there is lack of confidence in a nation, then the nation will be charged more for its debt. People won't invest, they won't risk their money, they'll save their money. Companies won't choose to base themselves in that country. And that's exactly what you see currently in the UK and many European countries. And conversely, you see the opposite. Despite all the arguments that there are fundamental issues with the American economy of enormous, unprecedented debt, but there is optimism and there is confidence and there is hope. European governments don't understand how important sentiment and the psychology of that is. That's why I think you're seeing interest rates going up. That's why you're seeing the cost of borrowing going up. That's why you're seeing companies not invest. It's actually a very simple thing to change.
And that's why I think it's so important and would be so powerful to say, let's set some real objectives around efficiency. Lomax, to your point, we've had the NHS go backwards. Over 6 years, productivity has declined 20%. It's not beyond the wit of man that you could imagine using tech to get productivity just back to where it was 5-6 years ago. And literally with that alone, you would free up tens of billions of pounds that either could be reinvested elsewhere or freed up for the kind of tax cuts we need. If you came out with a bold and ambitious budget to say, look, efficiency here, free up resource, use that to invest in some tax cuts over there, I think you could use that to trigger exactly the animal spirits, Andrew, you were talking about, to get the economy back and going. So I'd love to see that.
again, call me a pessimist, but I don't think you're going to find more than 10 billion of savings from this AI driving government. More than 10 billion. 10 billion? What the hell?
It should be actually, how can we accelerate the economy? How can we do things better? Not just the scarcity mindset of like, oh, we can only use this to save money.
No, I think I fundamentally disagree with you. Why can't it be both? Why
Well,
can't
I
it be both?
think it can be both, but
Of course.
I don't think AI, you can't, AI on its own, without changes in how the civil service operate, to Lomax's point, is not going to move the needle. So what you're really saying is reduce headcount, and that's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing, let's use AI to make things more efficient, but you're not actually talking about fundamentally cutting the budget.
No, you're applying selective hearing, because that is exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying let's get a proper budget in place with real numbers.
Not you, the government.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's the one thing we're missing from all the plans, because I think they've talked a lot about the right things, but the one thing they haven't talked about is where's that efficiency going to materialize in real numbers, in real pounds saved, because without that, it's all a bit meaningless.
I want to talk about something very non-topical, but I thought it was quite interesting. So a report came out this week from Microsoft and Carnegie Mellon, which was called The Impact of Gen AI on Critical Thinking. Now, what they've done is they've spoken to 319 knowledge workers over 936 different tasks that they were doing within their businesses using AI. And the inference was that we're losing critical thinking skills. AI is going to make us dumber. So I wanted to ask the room, do you believe this? Is this something that we should be mindful of, investing primarily in AI technologies? Is it something that you will take into account in any way? And Mads, do you want to kick this one off?
Answering your question, should we think about it? Yes, we should. I think there is a real risk. There are a couple of paradoxes that came out of the study. One was this confidence paradox, which paradoxically says that the higher confidence you have in the AI, the less critical thinking you apply to the answers, the worse you're going to do. Whereas if you have higher self-confidence, you're going to challenge the AI more, you're going to be more critical, and you're going to get much more out of using the AI. So it sort of flips a little bit the assumption about who relies on AIs and who's a good user of AI. And what that leads to is an immediate insight that it actually takes some training to use these models well. And this is back to a conversation we had a year ago, sort of saying, why is this not already mandated in schools? Because we know all the kids are using these models, but are they all getting the requisite training in using them critically? Critical thinking has become more important than ever. And this is not just about social media and sort of fake news. No, it's about the AIs we're using every day for our work. They have a propensity to lie to us or at least make stuff up. And we need to be really critical when we use them. So incredibly powerful. Think about it as the most brilliant assistant you've ever had, who just, throws a fib every 10 times. You ask them to throw a little lie, and then you got to figure out what it is. So you have to sort of watch out.
Do you think that's how they should build future models? Do they think they should intentionally build in just seeing if you're listening, just throw that one in?
Well, so that's a really good point. And this is something you can track, is how much they hallucinate, how much do they make stuff up. And that proportion is coming down. And there is a risk in that in and of itself, because we've not found a way to eliminate it. We've just made it smaller. And of course, it's a little bit like, most things as they get safer and safer, we get laxer and laxer and our critical thinking atrophies. So I think it's a super interesting area. I think it puts a lot of onus on all of us to think, really intentionally about how we use the tools. Doesn't make them less valuable. It's because they are so valuable that it's a risk. But it's just something to be aware of, I think, in the mix.
I quite like the fact that critical thinking is becoming much more talked about because of social media and now because of AI and LLMs. It feels like, the parents are going to be talking about this at parent-teacher evenings, and workers and bosses are going to be talking about this in work settings. So I feel like that alignment, I think, is quite a timely, powerful thing. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this?
I think every couple of generations, certainly in modern times, technologies come along which has rightly or wrongly stimulated fears of demise of human thought.
Rock and roll,
intellect.
the internet, television. I'm sure there's...
Yeah, exactly. And it happened with TV, when it came out.
Going to destroy the fabric of society.
Which I'm sure that it has an impact on how we think and how we behave, and for sure culturally. I'm not sure that LLMs in themselves are going to make us more stupid. far more worried about how modern society is impacted by what we eat and how we live rather than what we do from a digital consumption point of view. There are definitely challenges with social media, especially with kids. There's no question.
Last but not least, I want to very quickly scooch to this, and Lomax, I'm going to lean on you for this one. So AstraZeneca has pulled their vaccine plant. This was, from what I can tell, it was a state aid issue. So government pulled the funding, then put some funding back, and then kind of met them halfway, by which point AstraZeneca lost the will to live. Is that a fair appraisal?
Yeah, I'm actually like head in hands. Like this feels like snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. I don't want to have another like depressing kind of like chat about the UK
We have
government.
been
But we're
quite
going
miserable
to, I can feel one
We
coming.
have-
I can feel one coming.
have-
Go on, get in there,
they've
Lomax.
done-
Get in
I'll
there.
keep it
Get
short
in
and
there.
punchy. So AstraZeneca is a British-Swedish pharma company, FTSE 100 company, 54 billion revenue, 200 billion market cap, one of the biggest pharma companies in the world, famous for, you know, some big cancer drugs, Tagrisso, big lung cancer drug, 5 billion a year in revenue, like really impressive, famous for cancer vaccine, is the biggest pharma company in the UK, 5 manufacturing sites here. Was on the cusp of, and if you Google it, a year ago, a new £450 million new next generation vaccine plant was going to be built in Liverpool. It was all agreed. It was all announced. Jeremy Hunt, who's the former Chancellor of the Exchequer under the Tory government, had announced this. There was going to be 90 million of subsidies that was going to be given by the government. You know, of course, as you know, both within the US state to state and Europe, almost country to country, big projects like this, CEOs and boards, you know, shop them around trying to get grants, etc. And this happened 4 years ago with another plant that ended up going to Ireland. But this plant, let me just like, this is nickel and diming. The 90 million was promised by the Conservative government. Then we had the Labour government come in July. And they cut that. Rachel Reeves cut that down to 40 million. So it's a 50 million cut, which is nothing in the grand scheme of the government budget. And so AstraZeneca decided, well, you know, we're going to pull the plug. You basically cut the state funding or the help.
But they made
in
nearly
half.
9 billion in profit last year.
Vaccines just aren't important for AstraZeneca, right? It's a tiny part of what they do. I think you
That's
mentioned
not the story.
cancer drugs,
Okay,
but it's
sorry. This is going to be a quickie.
story-
40% of their profit comes from the cancer drugs, and nobody makes money from vaccines comparatively, right?
No, fair enough. But that's not the point here. The point is like the government fumbled. That the AstraZeneca team have pointed out that it was like a nightmare dealing with the people, incredibly slow, death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
The number got cut in half. We know that companies shop around the world trying to get the best deal. That's what they do, even if they are making 9 billion of profits. It's like, you know, if you're an investor in AstraZeneca, you'd be happy about this. Actually, Pascal Soriot, the CEO of AstraZeneca, has a knighthood from the British government. So actually,
And that
he
didn't
should be.
work.
Well, I leave it work. But my point is, okay, we talked about Rachel Reeves announcing a bunch of growth initiatives, all in the south. And Dan, you're always worried about everything going to the south, right? This is an example of something that was happening in Liverpool, in the north. It got nickel and dimed away by 50 million, and you know AstraZeneca have gone elsewhere. And so I just think it's just a stupid. You know, Andrew talks about sentiment. Sentiment is great. Absolute numbers are also important, and this would have trickled through to jobs and growth in the northwest. So I think it's just a lose. And you know, I don't want to end the pod on a lose, but it's a lose.
We
And it
are
reminds-
not going to end the pod on the lose.
Thank you. But it does
we're gonna-
remind me.
Just to clarify, though, the plant in Singapore is not going to do the same thing as the plant in the UK was going to do, right?
It doesn't matter. I'm not focused on that. I'm just focused on the fact that the government fumbles
We want to keep
an
the misery
important
here.
project.
Let's keep the misery.
They're far more interested in flogging anti-fat drugs, right? Because that's where the money
And
is.
I think, and also, and let's not forget, this is the same government. They pulled this 800. It was a bigger investment. This is not a 50 million pound, you know, state subsidy. A much bigger investment in a supercomputer they were going to build in Edinburgh. That was pulled from the budget. That was one of the things that was pulled. And so I feel like, you know, they didn't even have like the foresight 6 months ago to think about where the investment needs to come, and they're cutting these kind of things. Anyway. It makes me a bit sad, but you know, now Mads is very impressed by the Matt Clifford initiatives that Keir Starmer has adopted, and you know,
Are you flipping to positivity? Is that what you're doing here?
No,
Lawrence? I'm loving your work.
You know,
I'm
maybe
loving your work.
finally they've cottoned onto it. Yeah.
I was listening to Reeves on the Party Political podcast. Obviously, I've only listened to her in a non kind of party political broadcast scenario, possibly just this once. But she's very aware of how she's perceived. She's very aware of the shortcomings of the last budget. She's very aware of
That makes it even worse. That makes it even worse than if she wasn't bloody aware.
What
What she's really saying is that You're damn right. I don't care that I know these policies are stupid. I'm doing it because it's ideologically appropriate.
No, I think she's trying to find a line, and my sense of what she was saying is that sometimes that she needs to do more, and I would like to think that she thinks it's coming. Mads, I'm going to look to you for some optimistic positivity to close us off. Can I rely on you, my good man, for some fruity words?
Tomorrow, we are halfway through Q1. That means that spring is ahead of us. There has never been more opportunity to do the right thing. I think we have some good ideas of what can be done. I think it's interesting and exciting to talk about that. And I think we've tried to give a little bit of prescription and some ideas about what could be done on the show today. What I think is genuinely exciting is, although the problems are big, it's not like we're in the 70s where oil was the only, recipe for growth and we knew neither back nor forth. As we've got AI, we've got technology, we've got all the instruments here, we've got incredible talent coming out of our universities. We have a growing venture sector that can back these firms. We know what needs to happen. I feel all the ingredients are there. So I'm sort of like, I'm not going to wave the white flag. We can get this done. We can create growth.
I knew I could rely on you. I knew you'd raise the bar. Gentlemen, always a pleasure and a gift, and I'll catch you next week.
Well, hang on,
the flip
Dan,
side.
sorry, what about deal of the week? We need optimism. We need to end with optimism, man.
Tynes, do it. Go.
So I think, and we have a newly minted unicorn in Europe, Tynes, out of Ireland. Like
It's a lovely gig.
We've actually seen a number of mega rounds this year. So 11 Labs and Neco Health. Here's another one. Here's a new unicorn, and this is great to see.
So this is 125 mil Series C Tynes, Irish Boston, Irish New York. I think
Irish Boston, or very like Irish heritage company. I think they've now raised 285 million, which per what Mads and I often say, it takes about 300 million to
300 million to build a
they're pretty much, they're pretty much on the money there. Again, we like to talk about micro, participants. So then Blossom Capital led the Series A. So massive hats off to them. So this is great to see.
That's two positive, optimistic stories that we ended on. Boom. Let's get some more energy startups in the pot as well. Lovely. I'll catch you next week, gentlemen.
Love you guys.
Bye.